Then we stop recording, then we open it up for Q&A, and that's where you can share, be vulnerable, and ask those types of questions because we are not recording. All right, so without further ado, here's some quick stats. We are very young. We are only 5 months old, 20-second session, 20 guest speakers, 23 past members, and we are about to hit 700 members anytime today. So we are growing at a very fast rate. Um, so I just want to take a quick moment to introduce you all to our first guest. It's going to be John Suther. I've met John in person many times, and he's a really good guy. He's down to earth, easy to talk to. And most importantly, most of my guest speakers that I do invite, I know them quite personally. So he definitely likes to help people, and he has a genuinely nice heart. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to John. And John, if you don't mind doing a small introduction of yourself, and then go right into our one question that we ask all our guest speakers, which is, can you share one piece of insider knowledge that many job seekers might not be aware of, but would find incredibly helpful in their job search?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Danny. It was great seeing you in person the other day too. That literally yesterday. That was an early morning. I'll I will make an express elevator pitch because I've been doing this a long time and I could go into a lot of detail. But what I typically want people to know about me is, um, and this will be great news for some of you. I'm in the Charlotte area. I've been here since 1990, so this is kind of where I operate, and I have tended to work in the recruiting space, IT staffing, and mainly in the Charlotte area. It doesn't mean I haven't, crossed over, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll be really brief on. I got into IT right after college, so I sold computers and small networks for about a year and a half, and then I sold ERP systems for about 10 years. Chased the .com thing in the early 2000s. That story ended like a lot of stories ended. In that .com space, and I jumped into IT staffing. I was actually networking. So let's use this as a lesson learned. I was networking to find my next job selling software, and I figured staffing guys know a lot of companies, right? So I went to meet with them, and I was talking to them, and they're like, "Why don't you work for us?" Which, I think that probably ties into my one secret. But after working, I worked for a company called Signature Consultants, and I ran their mid-market business. So everything that wasn't called Bank of America or Wells Fargo in Charlotte, I ended up running. First, I sold, and then they said, "Why don't you hire another guy?" And why don't you hire, some guys and gals to do recruiting and more and more, and ended up having a team of 21 and a pretty large operation in Charlotte after 18 years of being there. Signature sold about 5 years ago, which was good and bad. I could also tie that into a lesson, but um, I went to work for another big staffing, billion-dollar staffing company. I ran their whole Charlotte office, which was our accounts for Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Truist, and Duke Energy. And I stayed there a year and a half, even though 3 months in, I knew I wasn't going to be there very long. But I had a sales team that was really untrained, and I felt like if I left, they'd all lose their job. So I stuck around a year to make sure I could get them functional so they could survive the next managing director. So I did that, and then I resigned and I started my own company. So I've been in business about a year and a half now, doing my thing and going back to my old clients. So yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. Um, so that's me in a nutshell. My philosophy, and I guess what I want you guys to know about me is when I learned staffing. It was relationship based, and some of you probably remember days where you'd actually have to meet with a recruiter in person. They would actually call you, they would build a relationship, and then you would start working on the job part. It seems like to me, and this is part of the reason I left the last staffing company, started my own business. They were more interested in, hey, Danny, I got a job. It pays this. Are you interested? Yes or no. You'd never met that person, didn't know anything about them, but they got a job and a rate and sounds like a company you might want to work for us. So you're like, sure. And then 3 months later, you've never heard anything, right? So that's not how I want to do business, and I don't think that's how this business should be done. So anyway, that's my take on the staffing business. I will tell you, I feel like there's really good companies out there, and there's a lot of other companies. I wouldn't call them bad companies. I think it's a process thing, not a person thing. So you'll get emails that just give you a job and a rate, and that's all it is. And I would encourage you to chase those opportunities, but I would also encourage you to go find somebody that's willing to invest in a relationship with you, uh, and get to know you a little bit so that they are not just blasting jobs to you that you're not really interested in, and eventually maybe they'll approach you with something that is appealing to you. So yeah, I guess that's my advice. As far as the question goes, Danny, I actually turned it into a little bit of a story, but I don't want to take too much time. So I'll defer to you if you want me to.
I think we have time. Let's go for it.
I'll be brief. So when I saw Danny yesterday, I was limping a little bit, and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I had an ankle replacement in January. So if you know anything about major surgery, it's a long, return process. And for me, there's a lot of mourning. I'm an active guy. I like to run. I've done the Spartan 3 times. I've run 3 half marathons. I play tennis. I played volleyball. I've done it all, right? Well, now I can't do that anymore. I've got a plastic on one side and metal and, on the other. So, I can't really do that anymore. So I had to get over that. I think there's a lot of parallels to, and I realize I'm talking fast. So if you guys want me to recap, but I don't want to spend half an hour. I want to spend 5 minutes on this. So there's a lot of parallels between losing your job, facing the reality, and then digging in for a recovery so you can get back where you want to get to with what I've been going through. So I put a little thought into that, knowing I was going to be speaking, and I want to use those parallels a little bit with you guys because I think there's some good information there. So um, I'm going to try not to read this, but I think I want to make sure I cover this stuff. So, like rehabbing a foot or whatever, your job search think of it as a longer process, um, and you've got to work through the mourning process. Was my first bullet, right? And the reason I said that is, my doctor came in a couple weeks after surgery and said, "Hey, how's your foot? Are you happy you got surgery?" And I said, "I don't know." And I'm like, of course I was happy. I was walking with my foot out sideways for 3 months before I got surgery. Now I could actually use crutches, but my foot was pointed forward. So good stuff. But the reason I think you've got to go through the mourning process is I've seen a lot of candidates who, they've lost their job, and the only thing they can talk about is they lost their job. And when that trickles into networking events and it trickles into interviews, that's not going to help you, right? You've got to let that go, and I think you've got to go through the mourning process. So realize the things that you did great at your old company. Realize the things that you maybe you wish you would have done different. Treat it like a breakup, throw it in the fire, whatever you got to do. Burn it all, but press the reset button and say this is really an opportunity for me to move on. And there's a couple speakers you've had, Danny, that have really talked pretty well to that redeveloping yourself. I think of John Donahue and Brian Howard as a couple that I think would be good examples to look back at. But so that was the first bullet point is kind of leave the past in the past and move on, so that you can be a better version of yourself when you're interviewing or you're networking with people and that kind of thing. The other part is do the work, right? So part of what I've seen when I've gone to rehab for my foot is I can see the people who are on the same level as me and they're not moving along, and I can hear their conversation with the therapist like, "Hey, did you do the exercises?" "Well, no, I didn't really do them this week." "Did you do what you're supposed, did you ice it, did you do whatever, right? And they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and that means it's going to take them longer to get where they want to go. So when it comes to job search, every little thing matters, right? It's is your LinkedIn updated? I saw someone the other day that was looking for a job, sent me their resume, and it's LinkedIn doesn't reflect what they've done on their resume. So it's mundane work. Not all of us are good at it, but find someone who is. If you're not good at it, and get them to update your LinkedIn. Make sure your resume is good. Anytime you get a new certification, make sure it gets to your resume. It's all those little things that you've got to continue to do. Build your network out. All those things, right? So that was my second takeaway is do the work. Um, Skipping to the end won't serve you well, right? Now, what I meant by that is, you know, after surgery, technically the work was done, but I wasn't ready to start walking again. I got to go through this process, right? I think a lot of people are. This is a tougher job market we've probably seen in a long time. It's going to take a little more work. It's going to take more effort, and it's going to take more time. And that's hard to grasp. You know what I mean? Sometimes because of all the negativity and the and the challenge, right, of not seeing those advancements. But just know that everything you're doing along the way is going to get there, and there is going to be an end point. There's going to be a celebration, but you can't snap your fingers and tomorrow it happens, right? So you gotta, just keep looking for the long term. And I think I actually had this come up with one of my connections that is looking for a job was asking me, hey, I sent them this information yesterday, and then I followed up yesterday, and now it's today. Should I follow up again? And that's what I mean by skipping to the end. It's like, especially if it's a working person you're trying to get in touch with, over hitting them and trying to, push your agenda maybe in front of the work that they've got at work that's keeping them going, isn't going to serve you well, right? So you got to find that balance between professional persistence and over communication, right? Where they start going, I don't know that I want to work with John. He's really all over me, and I don't want to refer him to someone else at my company because he's going to bomb them with emails every day, right? So that's kind of what I meant by skipping to the end. And I think I've got two more here. Use your network, right? So oddly enough, my brother had his ankle replaced a year ago. But his was a gruesome ski accident when he was 20. Mine's just years of abuse, I guess. But I asked him, how did it go? How was your recovery? So I could set some milestones for myself, and I could make my plan on how I was gonna get better, right, or get there. And I think everyone here is doing a great job networking. I think this is a big piece of it. Um, but if this is your only network, I'd encourage you to get more, right? Because you never know. It's that one conversation. And when I trained my salespeople, they would get frustrated with me, like, why am I going to meet with this manager? He doesn't hire, or she doesn't hire. And I'm like, she doesn't hire, or he doesn't hire today, and he or she doesn't hire, but you don't know who they know that hires, right? So you learn something in sales anyway. You learn something with every interaction you have. And I think when you're trying to look for a job, every networking engagement that you go to, there should be a positive outcome from that. And if you're not seeing it, then maybe you're not planning when you go into this meeting. So if I'm going to go meet with Danny, and Danny's maybe he's a plant manager at a manufacturing company, and I'm an IT person. I know that he knows there's ERP systems there. I know that he knows certain things. But if I just go talk to him and say, hey, great cup of coffee, how was work? Well, our plant shut down for 3 hours. I'm going to walk away knowing that their plant shut down and nothing else. The goal, what is your goal when you go in to meet with somebody, and what do you want out of that? And try to walk away with something tangible, and maybe even a next action item, right? Of what you're going to do. Okay, well, he's going to refer me to the person that runs the ERP system. Perfect. That's what my takeaway is. So again, just keep expanding your network and kind of growing your knowledge. Two more. Celebrate the small victories. I know we've talked about that. Danny, you do a great job of this on here. that's really really important. And then the last one, celebrate. I was talking to a friend of mine who went through a shoulder surgery, and we were both talking about, I'm still not happy with where I'm at, but when I look back 2 weeks, it was totally different than where I am now, right? So I'm looking forward to 2 months from now, 3 months from now, when I can walk through a mall without, kind of a hitch in my get up, as they say, right? But and you guys are all going to get jobs eventually, right? And one day you're going to look back and go, it was that coffee meetup. And then that guy said, I know somebody, and they introduced me to them. And then that person knew someone that was in their Girl Scouts troop that, a mother, and they introduced them to them. And next thing you're having conversations, right? And you don't know how you're going to get there. But I would encourage you to network everywhere you can, because the traditional post a resume on a job is really not netting the results, and that's why we're all here. But I would just encourage you to keep doing that, and then look for it. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. You just got to keep that optimism, right, and then keep those little baby steps along the way. And that's it for me. Thanks for letting me do that, Danny. I know it was
Thank
fast and
you.
furious, but that's how you like this call.
I do. All right, so let's stop the recording, and what we will do is we'll go into Q&A. Luther Vandross, do you want to take it over?